All right. Hello, I am Kyle Chambers with Quality Matters podcast and Texas Quality Assurance. Today, we're talking about PPE, personal protective equipment. So, do not be fooled into thinking that PPE is not a big deal. It's, in fact, a very big deal. If you've been told to wear PPE, the reason is because there's not much else we can do to keep you safe, but tell you put this stuff on. For instance, if you have to wear hearing protection, it's because we can't make the work area quieter. We need you to protect your hearing. If we're telling you to put on safety glasses, it's because we can't prevent a hazard that might throw something into your eye. Whatever it may be, if there's a rule for PPE, it's because we can't do much else to keep you safe. So wear it. It is your best chance to remain safe. All right, so don't neglect it. Don't neglect it. Lord knows how many times I've gone into a shop and I see guys walking around without safety glasses on. It's actually a big deal. All right, so the objective of today's training is we want to ensure that employees understand when and how to use PPE, how to maintain it, and how PPE fits into your overall safety program to minimize occupational injuries. Now, you might be saying, well, Kyle, you did the machine and tool use safety and you talked a lot about PPE. Doesn't that count as my PPE training? No, there's a lot more to PPE than just what matters for machine and tool safety. So we're going to go into it. Now, why PPE is important? First, well, there's legal requirements for it. This goes back to OSHA, the Occupational Health Safety Administration. They make, write, and enforce the safety rules across the nation. And in CFR 1910.132 through 138, let me tell you, they talk a lot about PPE. I'm giving you a very abridged version of all that they talk about. You're very welcome. All right. So the PPE hazard assessment process. May not have thought about it, but you can't just go, well, what PPE do we need over here in the shop? And it's not that simple. We actually have to assess it. What do we need? Why do we need it? When I was a safety manager, I actually created PPE assessments for each work area, and I assessed why we would need eye protection, what type eye protection, why we would need hearing protection, what type hearing protection, foot protection, all the way down the row. What do we need? Why do we need it? How are we going to use it? All right. So a new assessment might be required when there's new processes or new equipment. You put a new machine in there, you're using the work area in a different way than you did before. That should be an automatic trigger to review that PPE assessment. And yes, I kept these assessments public and posted for everyone in the work area to see. So not only did they know they needed safety glasses, they knew exactly why they needed safety glasses. And I really find that that helped out our supervisors, our foremen, team leads, and even just employees that really cared. Because everyone asks why. I mean, isn't that the first question we ask when we're little? Why? It never goes away. So give folks a why. It helps. Okay. So first type of PPE is head protection. Now, this is going to be hard hats. There are actual requirements for a hard hat. So don't go thinking that you put, your salad bowl from home on top of your head. It's not the same. You might think about hard hats. They've got kind of a little springy top on part. It doesn't actually sit directly under your head. Well, that's for a reason. When something hits the hard hat, we don't want that force just to go straight into your noggin. So those hard hats are actually designed pretty smartly and pretty well. And this is for falling objects, head strikes, and electrical hazards. So when you need to wear a hard hat really is if there's anything kind of at or above eye level that you could bonk your noggin on a regular basis, especially if things are moving with overhead cranes on a regular basis. We got to have a hard hat. All right. Eye and face protection. This is going to be your safety glasses, your goggles, and your face shields. I'm sorry, guys. Side shields on reading glasses are a joke. It doesn't make them safe. It doesn't. Your reading glasses, your eyeglasses are not made for impact protection. They're not. What's going to happen if something hits them? You're going to get not only what hit you in your eye, but also the shards of the plastic or the glass or whatever it's made of in your eye as well. They don't count. They also don't cover the appropriate amount. That's why safety glasses kind of look like clear sunglasses, is because they're covering enough of your face that we can be relatively sure that it's not going to go in that little crack or seam right there. Now, if you do wear glasses, there are two options for you. One is there are what are called prescription safety glasses. When I was a safety manager, I actually had a program set up where we can get some of our employees prescription safety glasses. There's lots of shops in most big cities that provide something like that. But if you don't have that option, you can get the glasses that go over the glasses. And I have those at home. When I'm doing woodworking, once you hit 40, this doesn't quite work. You got to kind of stretch it out. So if I'm doing woodworking, I don't exactly know where my blade's hitting when I'm up close on it. So I have to put on my glasses, and then I put my big geeky looking glasses over the glasses. It's true. They tend to fog up a little more. So you want to make sure that you maintain those anti-fog wipes. Really, really valuable tool. I used to keep dispensers of not just glass wipes, but the anti-fog wipes out in the shop. And it was a really, really useful, really helpful tool. You may also need goggles that seal around your face. And this is going to be when we're working with chemicals or even sometimes with vapors that might get in there, or a really high dust area. Sometimes goggles are the appropriate use. They are kind of uncomfortable. They can start to hurt your face after a little while. So if you're stocking goggles in your shop, I'll tell you right now, you're probably going to need to stock multiple types of goggles because everyone's face is a little bit different. And if it's a pretty regular requirement, you want to make sure that they fit well. And then face shields are another really common option. So I used to require that whenever my team was working with a grinder that was 3 inches or more above, that they wore a face shield and safety glasses. And thank God they did, because within 2 weeks of putting that practice into place, a guy's wheel exploded and it went through the face shield and embedded itself in his glasses. Without a doubt, it would have been a fatality. So this stuff does happen, and you want to make sure that you're properly protected. So if you've been told to use safety glasses, goggles, or a face shield, be certain you do it. All right, you want to avoid use anything with like flying particles, chemical splashes, and radiation as well. So this is why a welder's helmet has the shaded lens on it. Now, you do want to make certain that you're using the appropriate shade for the type weld you're doing, because it may not be dark enough. What's really awesome are the auto darkening shades, but you may or may not have that available in your workplace. So just make certain that you're checking that you're using the appropriate shade for the type weld you're doing. And there's some standard checklists out there that you can take a look at for those. Let's move on to body protection. So this is going to include things like lab coats, Tyvek suits, FRC. Again, that work area should have had a PPE assessment completed already. So you want to make certain that if you've been told to wear something, probably a good reason for you to wear it. And these type of things are to protect you, in the case of lab coats, Tyvek suits, from chemical handling, contamination prevention. So maybe it's to protect you, but maybe it's also to protect the environment. A number of shops I've worked in, they have clean rooms. And so when you go into a clean room, the first thing you do is walk on a sticky pad so it picks up the dirt and debris from your shoes. Then you put on the shoe booties, little covers over your shoes. And then you go ahead and put on a full gown that completely covers you. And in my case, I have to get a couple of hair nets for my beard and a hair net for the top of my head. And let me tell you, I look pretty funny going in there. But you have to do that sometimes to avoid contaminating the work environment, as opposed to it contaminating you. A lot of shops, you may have to use FRC's, fire-resistant clothing. It's not the most comfortable. I've had to wear them before. It gets pretty hot. They're sometimes a little more heavy. So you got to make sure that you're staying hydrated and things of that nature. But FRC is really, really important, especially if you're working in an area that where fire is a risk. Oh my gosh, if you're wearing synthetic clothing, which really, if you're most all clothing these days is part or even fully synthetic, that stuff doesn't quite burn. What it does is it will melt into and bond with your skin. Very, very, very nasty situation if something like that occurs. So if you're working in an area where fire and heat are an option, with FRCs, anything you wear under it, strongly recommend avoiding synthetic clothing. Make sure we go with something that's cotton or wool, things of that nature. All right, hand protection. Okay, your tool room attendants out there, I know you feel the pain here. You got to stock a lot of gloves because everyone's got a different size hand and there are different gloves for different types of operations. So maybe you need something that's just chemically resistant. Maybe this is going to be like a nitrile glove or a rubber glove. And you know what? Some people have an allergy to nitrile. Have an allergy to latex. You have to use a nitrile glove. You got to make sure you're using the appropriate glove because different chemicals react different ways, but we're going to have those in there. That was the case for an inspection bay at a previous shop. Is they always wore the nitrile gloves. That way they wouldn't have any oils or contamination on the parts, and they also wouldn't get any of the powders and dyes on their skin. Sometimes these gloves are for biological hazards as well, such as the case like doctors. That's why doctors are always putting gloves on. It's to protect us from those biological hazards. And we need something that is not permeable, whereas like leather is permeable, right? Stuff can get through it. Cuts and abrasions. This is where big leather gloves come in handy a lot of times as well. And I've even had an instance where we had a shop where there was a lot of work with grinders, a lot of work with pneumatic tools that caused a lot of vibration. And we had guys start developing, maybe not developing, but hands getting really sore. And we saw the potential of the development of carpal tunnel syndrome if years of exposure went unchanged. This was part of our PPE assessment. And so we actually found some gloves that had these big packs of gel on them, and that gel actually absorbed about half the vibration from the gloves. So it was really, really useful. The problem we ran into, those gloves are really expensive. So if you do have gloves like this, do your company a favor and take good care of them. Really take good care of them, because these gloves may be $40, $50 a pair or more. And, that's just not something you can change out every day. So make sure you take good care of it. Don't use them for improper purposes. There are also gloves for temperature extremes. Maybe we've got something that's gonna help protect you from extreme heat or cold. But it's important to always use the appropriate glove for the appropriate task. And if you're wondering, well, what type glove do I need? You ask yourself, is this for chemical, biological, cuts, vibration, or temperature? Make sure you're using the appropriate glove for the appropriate purpose. Foot protection. This is to protect you from crushing, punctures, chemicals, heat, and electrical hazards. There are actually multiple types of safety footwear. Now, the most common type is going to be a steel-toed shoe with a puncture-resistant and slip-resistant sole. This is like what you're going to find when you go to Boot Barn or Red Wing or any of these places like that. I have no sponsorship nor affiliation with any of them, but you go to buy your work boots. Sometimes we have to have boots that are specifically protected from electrical shock, that it's not going to accidentally ground us or things of that nature, that we're not going to have to worry about, if the ground's charged, is it going to come up through us? All sorts of different things you have to think about from time to time. And even sometimes there's steel-toed shoes where it goes up all the way onto the top of your foot. This is pretty rare. They're pretty uncomfortable to work in. But if you've been told to wear these, there's probably a really good reason for it. So make sure that we're maintaining it. Hearing protection. So if your shop has required you to use hearing protection, this means a couple of things. One, they've identified that the noise levels are so high in the shop that you're going to wind up with hearing damage. What this means is that the sound level is at 85 decibels or above on average for more than for 8 hours a day. This is what we call a time-weighted average. And this is the level that can cause hearing damage. So if you think about, say, like when you shoot a gun, it's probably around 120 to 140 decibels. Same thing like a jet engine taking off. Common conversation is about 65 decibels. Rock concert's going to be in the 90s. So that kind of gives you an idea. But that's enough where you can't have a conversation. If it's so loud that you and another guy can't have a conversation, you're probably getting close to that level. And if we're staying there on average for 8 hours a day, it's going to cause you hearing damage. So to protect that, your company will have selected an appropriate hearing protection. Now, any earplugs won't do, any earmuffs won't do. They have what's called an NRR, a noise reduction rating. There's a few ways they're calculated. I'm not going to go into the extremes on it, but let's say that we're operating at 90 decibels. We don't really have to have that high of an NRR to bring the noise level down low enough that it's not going to cause damage. On the other hand, if our shop is consistently at 100, 105, 110 decibels, especially like with abrasive blasting operations, you really need some pretty good hearing protection to bring that level down. So you want to make sure that we're wearing the most appropriate hearing protection available. This also means your company is probably going to be conducting an annual audiogram on you. And what they're doing is checking your hearing level to make sure that you did not have what they call a standard threshold shift, meaning you lost too much hearing from one year to the next. That actually counts as an injury in your work environment. So make sure we're wearing the appropriate hearing protection. Respiratory protection. Lots of different types of respiratory protection. Now, I will say if you are required to wear respiratory protection as a part of your day-to-day job, your company is required to get you a pulmonary function test, meaning they want to make sure that your lungs are working good enough that with something over your face all day long, you can breathe and not get sick from trying to breathe too hard, too long. So most common type is disposable respiratory protection. This is the mask that goes over your face. You're going to throw it away at the end of the day. Don't use that same mask for 2 or 3 days in a row. Dadgum. Get you one in the morning, get you another one in the afternoon after lunch. And for you shop owners that are like, oh, Kyle, that's too expensive. I know it sucks. But we can't have guys breathing and these nasty, dirty masks. What happens is they get wet from breath, and they can start to develop mold issues. And now you may be protecting from the outside dust, but now the guy's breathing in mold. And it's just no good. No good. So you want to make sure that if it's a disposable respirator, meaning a mask, little ones that go around your ears, that you dispose of them on a regular basis. There's also air purifying and air supplied respirators. So I used to run a abrasive blasting operation. And in abrasive blasting operation, these guys wear this full head suit, and they've got an air hose going to it, and we had to have air filters on it, and an O2 monitor, and a CO2 monitor to make sure that they're getting all the good air that they need. Those things are regular cleaning requirements and things of that nature. So if you're required to wear anything beyond the disposable mask on a day-to-day basis, you're actually required to have a respiratory, not just a function test, but fit test. So like, say the mask that goes over your face like this with the pancakes on the side, because maybe you're doing like a spray painting operation, you actually have to go get that thing fit tested to make sure that it seals around your face. Now that's bad for me. You can't do a fit test with a beard. So I would have to shave the beard. It was pretty funny. I had an employee once. He had a nice beard too. But because the job he had to wear a respirator. And so I told the guy, like, man, I'm really sorry, but you get in this new position, I have to send you for a fit test. And he's like, okay, well, whatever, I'll do a fit test. I was like, no, you don't understand, man. You can't have the beard. He's like, what? He's like, let me see it. And so he put the mask on his face and he got a Sharpie and he marked where it's sealed, marked down there. I'm not recommending it, but it's what he did. And he shaved a strip of his beard where the mask went. And he did the fit test. It fit. It did not leak. As long as he maintained his beard, we allowed him to do that. But in any case, point being, you got to get it fit tested because you can't have any little cracks that are going in it. Because if you got those filters or pancakes on it, that's what's protecting you. All right. But if you have to do the respiratory protection, like I say, you've got to have the fit test. You got to have a medical evaluation. Yes, even for the N95 mask that just sits over your nose, you have to have a medical evaluation for it to make sure you're healthy enough to wear that on a daily basis. All right. Let's talk about PPE selection. You want to make certain, this more talking to the safety managers, but this is also for you guys using the PPE. Look at it. Go look at the inside of your safety glasses. I guarantee you're going to see the letters Z87, maybe some additional stuff on it, but at minimum, you're going to see Z87 written on it. That's because there's an ANSI, American National Standards Institute, rating called Z87 that identifies minimum requirements for those safety glasses. That's how you know that they're made in accordance with it. When you go get your steel-toed boots, I guarantee you look on the label, you're going to see something about an ANSI or an IOSH rating on those boots as well. And that's how you know you're getting precisely the right ones you need. So we want to make sure that we're only using certified equipment. You know what? You can buy this stuff that's not certified. Usually that's for home purposes, which really just means this is a really cheap knockoff that we can't sell to the workplace. So we're going to sell the really cheap knockoff to whoever wants to buy it. Look, we've all bought these things before. It's not the good stuff to buy. All right. You also want to make sure that comfort and fit. These are really critical. If it's not comfortable, most people won't wear it. And if you don't wear it, you don't get protected. What good does it do? Ill-fitting PPE can be just as dangerous as no PPE at all. If those safety glasses are always falling off your face and you're constantly having to push them up and push them up and push them up, well, then your hands aren't available for what you're doing. You're putting your hands on your face. You're introducing new hazards, new risks. Make sure it fits. Take the time to make sure it fits. Take the time to select the proper one. Same thing. Gloves, and they're all floppy and big. You don't get a good grip. They're not going to do the job. Okay. So proper use of PPE. Just make sure that you know how to put it on, how to take it off. They call it don and doff. Goofy terms we use. But you want to inspect it. Just like everything else, we do an inspection. We want to check it for cracks, tears, holes, broken seals, dirty lenses, degraded plastic straps. Throw them away. They're no good. Get them replaced. All right. Never share PPE unless it's properly sanitized. I mean, look, I don't want to be putting someone else's sweat on my face. Sorry. I'm not putting on someone else's stinky gloves, stinky shoes, whatever they got in there. Don't want to do it. Make sure it's sanitized if you have shared PPE, especially if you're having to wear it like a respirator. Oh, make sure you've got a good cleaning process for those because it's just gross. Let's just not do it. But that's the basics, folks, of PPE. So if you've been told to wear it, there's probably a good reason you need to wear it. Make sure it fits. Make sure you take care of it. If it's dirty, nasty, broken, dispose of it. Get you something new. But take care of it too, because recognize this is actually a significant cost to your company. And, you want to protect that. So that's all I got. You all have a good day. Stay safe.